So open source intelligence is just using search engines and things like that to find out as much data as you can on a company. In our case, we want names, especially servers, things like that. We bought a lot of this from Micah. Micah Hoffman wrote his open source intelligence course 47, so thank you, Micah. It is shocking what is exposed to the internet, especially in the States. Now, Europe, they've redacted a lot of that stuff, as you've seen. But in the States, we have a lot of data exposed on us. SANS used to have a one-day OSINT course, and Mike has now written a brand new week-long one. I taught the one-day course, and I offered myself up as human bait. I said, find out everything you can about me. And I gave them a bunch of little flags to capture. You know, date of birth, address, pictures of my house, what I paid for my house, when I bought my house, name of any family members, any phone number, any website, anything you can find. My dog and the breed of my dog, the whole 9 yards, right? And they went down and chased all this stuff down. They found my mother, whose name hasn't been Conrad since mid-70s when she married my stepfather. They found both my sisters, whose names haven't been Conrad in the 20-plus years they've been married. They found my brother, who's actually my half-brother, my stepfather's son, whose name's not Conrad. They found all that. They found my son, Eric, also named Eric, my wife. Didn't find Emma at the time. At the time, this is like, it's going back now. She's 17 now. She's probably like 9 then. Emma had no online presence that I could see publicly. I was very happy about that. And then she turned 9 that year, and her high school website newsletter said, happy birthday, Emma Conrad, turned 9, October 19th. I'm like, full date of birth, online forever, you know. They found my dog, Billy the cheese dog. Billy flunked out of, he went to school he was trained to be a service dog for a blind person, and he flunked out of service dog school, so we got him. And I'm like, well, Billy, you're Conrad now, you flunked out, you fit right in with the cousins, man. And they found Billy online from his dog license, and a student walks up and he goes, Billy, you're Black Lab, right? I'm like, yeah, Billy's a Black Lab, a cheese dog, we love Billy. He goes, Billy's missing some original equipment, isn't he? Yes, we modified Billy after the factory, you know, spayed, neutered, whatever you call it, male dog. So even the fact that Billy was, you know, altered after the factory, online, you know, all that stuff, right? So it's amazing what's out there, right, on people, and you should look up stuff on yourself. I routinely search for fragments of my address. Like I live at 152 Brackett Ave, and I'll search for 152 Brackett Ave and in quotes and put Conrad in quotes and see what I find. Like I routinely look for stuff on myself to see what's out there, perhaps intentionally or unintentionally so. A lot of this data is fairly low quality. So there's a lot of data out there. For people, it can be kind of hit and miss on the quality, and but there's lots of stuff to go through. For us, we're going to focus on names and websites and things like that. Find out what's leaking from your company. You know, search for, we had a massive wave of spear phishing. When I did some research, and to the best of my knowledge, a salesperson's sales lead deck was stolen. They had like a spreadsheet, they were selling stuff to healthcare companies, and the sales lead database was stolen. So whatever they used to store all the full name, phone numbers, title of executives across New England, healthcare executives, was stolen, and then used as an engine for spear phishing. Very, very successfully, by the way, right? So you should be searching for your own stuff out there, going on sites like Pastebin, right? Where hackers will dox you by DOX, document is what it means, right? Steal your data, steal your passwords, steal your email, post it on Pastebin, right? So you should be doing some, proactive searches on that stuff for yourself, for your family members, for your company, right? I believe. Let's talk some open source intelligence. And mind map, so this is Michael Hoffman. Collects OSINT data, pivots from one source to another. There's lots of stuff out there. In the end, our mantra is, I want to know how to do the command manually. You just ran some dig commands manually. In the end, I'll probably use a tool for most of that. But I know how to do it manually. And that's the difference between an amateur and a pro. You know, for example, I take a pro pen tester and an amateur pen tester, and I hand them Ubuntu 18.04, plain vanilla, and I say, do a pen test. You're not allowed to install any more tools. You can script, but no tools, right? Go. The amateur's dead in the water, gone. The pro will get a pen test done. It's going to be slower, won't be as pretty, won't be as nice or efficient, but you'll get something done, right? So my metric is, do you know how the tools work? If I took the tool away, I take DNS Recon away, can you still use dig? Maybe I use DNS Recon in the end, but a pro can still get by. That's the distinction. You know, I want to hire engineers, people who know how things work. Whenever I interview network engineers, I ask them, how does traceroute work? You learn a lot about that engineer I'm talking network engineers, very, very quickly. It traces the hops across the internet. Yeah, how's it do that? It traces the hops across the internet using ICMP. Well, yeah, how? Because when I first used traceroute, I'm like, that's cool, how's it doing it? I have to know. Like traceroute will show you this router, then that router, then that router, then that router, right? And it's very simple how it works. I'm talking about traceroute. A thing called, not a web app thing, but time to live. Time to live is once it hits 0, the packet's dropped. Normally your time to live, your initial time to live is 64, 128, depends on the OS. It has to be big enough to cross the biggest network. Every router that routes it drops the TTL by 1. TTL hits 0, the packet's dropped. It's designed to stop routing loops. When A sends to B and B sends to A and A sends to B and B sends to A. It'd spin forever without a time to live. And so the way traceroute works is you set the TTL to 1 and send the packet. First router gets it, drops it, right? Okay, now you set the TTL to 2. First router gets it, decrements to 1. Second router decrements to 0, drops it and says, hey, I dropped your packet. That's how traceroute works, right? Very simple. But I want to hire engineers that know that. You can use traceroute, of course, but do you know how it works? An engineer should want to know how it works, in my opinion. A good one. So we'll use automation, but we understand the fundamentals first is my goal, right? A lot of search engines, and you should be using Google, DuckDuckGo and Bing. You're probably using Google, for this purpose, for pen testing. Bing and DuckDuckGo will sometimes have things Google doesn't. This often comes up when you can tell Google not to index some things or take things out of the cache. There's a way to do that. You accidentally expose something to the internet. You have Google take it out of the cache. You can do that. But maybe you forget about DuckDuckGo or Bing or whoever else is out there. You don't do it for them. You can find, now overall I find Google to be the best search engine, but sometimes the others find stuff that Google doesn't, right? And they have different syntax for the key operators. I make heavy, heavy use of these things, right? Quotes to force a literal match, excluding elements, searching for things in the cache, ext and file type. Now this is inconsistent. If I say site colon sec542.com, ext colon PDF, I'll find some PDFs. Then if I say site colon sec542.com, then double quote PDF, double quote, I'll find different PDFs, like an overlapping Venn diagram of PDFs. Sometimes ext or file type finds them, sometimes just a string search finds them. Try them both, in other words, right? You can actually search other search engines via DuckDuckGo, and the syntax for that is in the notes. That's pretty cool, right? DuckDuckGo is a privacy-focused search engine. I've actually tried to use it, but I'm pretty tired of Google and Google Maps and everything. I do like DuckDuckGo. I've tried it, but the integration, especially with Maps, is what threw me off, right? Bing has some nice stuff as well. I make heavy use of these features. Cache content. They've deleted something online, but the internet cache has it, or the Wayback Machine found it. Very, very common. People take stuff down, and then the Wayback Machine found it. I like looking for Wayback Machines and stuff going back to the mid-90s when I was setting up web servers then. I like looking at that stuff. Ancient web servers from years and years ago. Here's SANS from quite a while ago, right? 2003, looks like, yeah, 2003 SANS site. Back we had, remember that? Track 1, track 2, track 3. that's hilarious, right? 401 was track 1, et cetera, et cetera. 503 was track 3, 504 was track 4 back in the ancient times. That's when I first started taking SANS courses, by the way. So here's Shodan. Shodan is a search engine for the Internet of Things. They must have an amazing team of lawyers, by the way, because my lawyer would like, you can't do that, Eric, but their lawyers seem to think it's okay, and they have a lot of them, I'm guessing. So it searches for, well, webcams, routers, power plants, iPhones, wind turbines, et cetera, right? Very useful in Shodan images. So images.shodan.io, it does require an account. The account is, I believe, $49 last for the searching part, for the advanced searching. I believe it's $49. If you have a .edu account, it's free. And every Black Friday in November, they have a $5 sale. They've done this for years. I paid $5 for my lifetime account. So $49 is well worth it for a pen tester, or really anyone, I think. Someone in your company should have this. Search for your company name, in other words. See what's in there. And this is showing images.shodan shows anything that shows an image, including Spencer Lowe's desktop. Hello, Spencer. It's always interesting to see desktops logged in, by the way. VNC, it'll find. Video cameras, it'll find. So you can search for webcam. And here you have some webcams. Now, some of these are probably designed to be online. Some of these are probably not. And, whatever. We'll hit next. You often see babies in cribs. I'm going to quit there. Well, I haven't shown anyone naked yet. But you often see aquariums, but inside of people's houses. Like some of these things are not supposed to be online, I don't think. Another good search is port 544, which is another video port. Does this dude know he's online right now? I'm guessing not, right? I'm guessing not, right? You often see babies in cribs, so it's interesting, right? And luckily, they put the vendor's name in here somewhere. So Hipster Soda Company was in here. How I found it in Showdown, excuse me. So I click on this thing, and this is the unauthenticated straight-in view, right? So then I bust it up. Do I know anything about Allen Bradley 1763s? I knew zero about them until this moment in time, zero. I busted out my lead hacking skills. I Googled Allen Bradley PDF username password 1703. Boom. Username administrator, password ML1100. I log in. When you call hacking, I call logging in, right? That's a lot of truth to that, right? When you call hacking, I call logging in, right? And now I'm logged in. I'm in, Hacker voice, I'm in, right? And I could turn the plan on. I could turn the plan off. I could do whatever I want, right? So I asked if I could, they still weren't understanding the gravity situation. So I said, I want to turn the plan off. They're like, well, please don't. And your one Google search from, please don't to a black hat, right? I said, what time do you normally stop the plan? Well, what time do the people leave? Like you shut it down, you flip that switch. Oh, 5:30, all right, I'll shut it down at 5:30, I'll turn it off, not you. And they still weren't understanding the gravity situation. And from my laptop sitting right next to it, I hit the button, turn it off. Whole plant stopped, everyone lost their mind, And hilariously, Chris Crowley was teaching this class in Asia, and employees of that company saw this slide, who worked for that very company, right? And kind of an awkward moment. And they're very polite, and they came up to him on break, they said, well, we work for this company, and what should we do to fix this? All right. He's like, well, one, I wouldn't show all this data to an unauthenticated user. I would show a very generic login screen, and I wouldn't allow default credentials. I would force the change somehow to something unique. Or maybe worst case, like I've seen the vendors put the password on a sticker on the box itself. Now you need physical access to get that thing. Not ideal, but better than this. A lot of things you could do, right? Had a conversation, they apparently fixed it. All right, cool, that's good, right? I'm glad they weren't angry at me, or Chris, right? So what you should do is, again, it's scoping stuff initially. Does the vendor have stuff that they don't even know they have? The vendor controls it, someone else controls it. Your client has stuff that IT doesn't manage. It's shadow IT, Most companies have shadow IT, right? Where users take on IT functions in the cloud, whatever, on their own, right? And so then once you find it, hack it, but should it be in scope is a good discussion on Showdown initially. LinkedIn is a gold mine, man. You linked it with all your coworkers, and my email is econrad@sans.org, and I linked him to Seth Meisner. He works for SANS, he's probably smeisner@sans.org. It's not a hard inference to make, right? So it's a gold mine. I've heard of nation states using this to target people. I've received very, very, very odd employment offers from foreign countries through LinkedIn, right? I ignore them, I don't answer, I don't engage, but very specific and odd things from certain countries known to do nation state work. I don't know if I'm being targeted or it's a broad brush kind of a thing. Some of that was not legit, I can tell you that, from my keen powers of inference. So recruiters use it, but also nation states use it. It's a lot of data out there. They're like, oh, I manage a Checkpoint Firewall 1 version 3.9. Oh, good. Now I know I have to hack that thing. I manage Cisco's Firepowers version 2.0 to 4.0, whatever. People list versions. Job postings, by the way, do this too. HR lists actual versions of technology you use for defensive stuff, like IPSs and antivirus. You're listing the actual vendor and version you're using in your job postings and people's resumes. Very common, right? Steal all that, harvest it. Lots of metadata. I know U.S. military has seen a lot of this when you're posting photos online with the GPS tag in it, showing you where that photo was taken. It can be very dangerous for certain lines of work, including military, obviously, right? Wasn't that that fitness tracker that was tracking like all these military bases, like secret bases, where they were tracking their fitness on their, it was posting GPS to public data. It's crazy, right? And usernames, full file paths, code comments, all kinds of stuff. Oh, hilariously, GitHub. So many Fortune 500s developers are pushing code to GitHub with passwords and keys in that code. It's very common. So GitHub was chock-a-block full of all these keys and passwords and whatnot. And then a lot of developers went back into GitHub and removed those credentials. And when they removed the credentials and the change, when you make a change, you usually put the reason for the change. They put remove password in the change. And the old version is still there, right? So then we all started searching GitHub for remove password, remove key found, go to the previous version, having a big old party, you know, all kinds of stuff leaks out, man. EXIF tool, nice tool for getting metadata. Additional data through thicker documents like PDFs and Word docs and spreadsheets. All kinds of stuff can be embedded in there. The tool, ARTIS, NASA Space Flight Awareness. This is in the image you just saw from cuts42.sec542.com. Look at all the stuff that's in there, right? Time was last modified. NASA posted it using Adobe Photoshop to create it. And the version, now I know they have Adobe, you know, I can try hacking that, send them attachments that use Adobe, right? Things like that, or exploit Adobe, I should say. Tesseract, how do you read images from, or read strings from images, right? There are words in an image. Can I harvest that stuff? It could be interesting stuff, right? It'd be tedious to do so with your own two eyeballs. You could. That'd be very tedious, right? The Tesseract will do OCR, carve through all that stuff, and identify text in many languages here, right? Vogon poetry is the third worst poetry in the planet, I believe, in the universe, rather. And it was actually Freddle Grunt Bugly. Thy victimations are to me. That was 2, not TN. So it's not perfect. It's got a few typos in there. But overall, it's pretty good. It's probably 95% there, 98% there, right? Then you can do searches on that, of course. Use it to build a word list. Maybe one of these words is a website. Maybe gruntbugly.sec542.com exists, and it does actually. That actually exists, right? So these could be usernames, these could be passwords, these could be directory names, right? All kinds of stuff, right? So add that to your word list. Build a word list from text-contained images. There we go there. A few little command line kung fu, remove blank lines. That's a regular spectrum, means beginning and end with nothing in between, right? 1 word per line, FMT1. At least 4 ASCII printable characters, strings -N4. Require at least 1 letter of the alphabet. egrep-I, which is case insensitive, A through Z. It'll match A, B, C, D, whatever, right? Little command line kung fu, and then sort them and unique them at the end. Folk is awesome. I like Folk a lot because it's so easy my clients can use it. You know, I can show them tools like this. I could go to my client and say, yeah, but that's hard. To someone who's never done this kind of stuff, that's a lot to take in, let's be honest, right? You know, even something like that is a bit challenging. But this, if you can use a web browser, you can use Foca. Foca has now been released. They've open sourced it. It's free. They have a successor to it. But the actual tool, Foca, and it's very easy to use. What it does is it spiders a website, and it downloads any document that contains metadata, and then inspects the metadata. So it actually downloads all these documents, right? So you run it, I ran against sans.org, as you see here. It pulls down every Word doc and every PDF and every PPTX and on and on and on, and automatically does that. Now, I can do this for my client, but the point is, the first time you do this is usually an OMG moment where they can't believe how much data they're sharing. Then what you do, you start iterating through, you start redacting and removing the metadata you're exposing that you didn't want to expose, right? So the idea is you run it once, you're shocked, you're concerned, you're horrified by how much data is out there. You start removing the documents or the metadata in the documents, and then you want to run it again and again and again and iterate, right? And I can do this for my client as a service. I'd rather just give them Foca and have them do it themselves, right? That's easy enough to do. It's a free tool, runs on Windows. Even tell my customer to use a Linux tool, they may not have any Linux at all, you know, that they IT manages anyways, right? So we found a bunch of people. Brian Corcoran, I know him. Charles Edge, these are real people. The elusive Mad Hatter with the least speak name. I want to meet that guy, person. Very cool. There's also suites and expose various APIs for our consumption. And you can open public APIs. Again, many of these tools will plug into, say, Google's Ajax key. Most of these sites like VirusTotal have API keys, right? ways to integrate, ways to program. You can import those keys into some of these OSINT suites now, including Maltego. Maltego is often the second tool a web app pen tester pays for after a Burp Pro. Right, this is often the second tool we pay for. It's on the order of a few $100s, $500, $600 last time I checked. It's very well known, and it automates a whole bunch of behavior, and it works off transforms. So the idea is, I put in www.sec542.org, and it finds www.sec542.net. And then if you add that to the scope, then that's churning on that. It'll go from email to domain to NS record, and every piece of data, it's a big feedback loop. Every piece of data you give it, it finds more data. It kind of churns and feeds back to these things called transforms, building out its knowledge of data on that domain, that thing you're looking at, right? CE is free, very limited. Case file is free, even for, so CE is not for professional use. You're supposed to pay for it. You should. It's not that expensive. Case file is free, but pretty limited as well. It's got a more smaller set of things that it does. Push button. Now, you know my thoughts on push buttons. You know, I don't mind if you're pushing a button like traceroute. Not that there's a button for that, but you get the idea. If you know how the thing's working. So once you understand how the tool's using, yes, press all the buttons you want. But once you've mastered the concepts, you can use Google yourself. You can use Whois yourself and dig yourself. And once you've mastered those concepts, sure, press buttons is going to save you time, as long as you understand how that thing is working. That's the goal, my goal. We have the harvester. Does a whole bunch of stuff automatically. Been around a long, long time. One of the oldest OSINT tools out there. Auto OSINT leverages the harvester and PyFoca, Python Automate Foca, and Kali Linux will package a lot of these things up. Again, we went with our own distro in here, but Kali Linux makes a lot of these things available out of the box. Hey everyone, now let's take on Lab 1.2. If you haven't already, open up Firefox and go to 541.1, 1.2, virtual host discovery. So we're gonna try to discover additional names associated with any host. You heard me talk about virtual hosts previously. It's critical for a pen test to discover as many virtual hosts as possible. As I said previously, I can't surf to the website, the virtual host. I have to know that name to get there. You could have a web server hosting 1,000 sites with different names. One IP, 1,000 names. I have to know each name. So we're going to discover X509 certs. So there's this wonderful thing called transparency reports. When you issue an X509 cert, which is the encryption, well, a key piece of the encryption behind SSL and TLS, if you issue one publicly, that's a public record. You can harvest these names. So a developer has put a hidden virtual host up. He or she has made sure there's no link to it anywhere. Google doesn't know about it. It may be a complex name, perhaps a random name, .sec542.org, let's say. And they're thinking, you can't discover this without knowing the name. The name's randomly generated. You can't find it unless you know it. Well, if they issue a cert for it, I can certainly find it. So we're going to use these two sites, transparencyreport.google.com /HTTPS certificates. Oh, pro tip, if you're opening links in the wiki, if you just click on the link, you notice how I lost my wiki there, it went away. So I'll search for sans.org. Now Google's fine for kind of casual use, but I find crt.sh to be better for power use. And it's very common, by the way, to see other providers in here. You may see Cloudflare in there. You may see Encapsula in here. Like it's very common for companies to host their data behind Cloudflare, which offers anti-DDoS protection, distributed denial of service. So don't be surprised to see other vendors in here. We have a wildcard cert. Now, think about wildcard search. You might think, well, if I'm looking for virtual hosts and there's a wildcard cert, that doesn't really help me. Wildcard means I could have 100 sites, names.sans.org, share the same cert. So if everyone's using wildcard certs, I can't really discover virtual hosts that way. Remember, we can go back years and years, though. So let's say wildcard certs become more common recently, but years ago they were less common. So if I can go back to like 2012, 2010, you may see older names in there. And most companies, including SANS, by the way, use a combination of wildcard certs and actual search for names beyond one or two. So we can see the details here on this wildcard cert and certificate details, things like that. Those are the matching DNS names. As I said, I find crt.sh to be better for power use. Sorry, sans.org. And feel free to search anyone you want, your own company's name. I have had students tell me they've discovered shadow IT this way. Shadow IT is when non-IT workers take on IT functions, like issuing X509 certs, or setting up Gmail accounts for like the auditors. I've seen that. So they outsource stuff, they put stuff in Dropbox, they take on IT functions without involving IT. And since they're not IT, they're probably not as security minded, probably. And one of my students discovered that the salespeople were setting up websites without telling IT, and the websites were terribly insecure. They weren't being audited, they weren't being pen tested because IT didn't know they existed. And they found it this way. So I'm going to click on this one here. You can tell I've been here before to see what this one is here. These global sign ones up here are probably like the encapsula ones, I think. This one, and yours is going to be different, by the way. When you see your output, it's going to be different. This is live data, okay? So your output will be different. This is live data. We'll click there. And here we find this name called dev-dashboard.aws.sans.org. Now, you're not allowed to pen test SANS. I want to be clear. This isn't pen testing. This is open source intelligence, right? OSINT, they call it. So you're not allowed to pen test that thing. But if I were hired to pen test SANS, I'd be going after that right now. And I'm not hired to pen test SANS, to be clear. So, but you find that's a pretty interesting looking name. It says dev. A pen test pro tip. Anytime you see dev, that's a good sign it might be development. It could be less secure than production. I don't know. I'm not saying that here. So you can find all kinds of interesting things. And you see here, these certs go back years and years. 2013, you get the idea. And it goes back in time quite a ways now. Now I've searched for sans.org. Let's do sec542.com. Okay, sec542.com. So we have a number of sec542 things we've registered. In the VM, we use .org and .net, as you've already seen. On the capture the flag, you're going to use sec542.io within the capture the flag. And we reserve sec542.com for internet-facing stuff. That's stuff that's actually on the internet, not inside your VM, not in the CTF. And so we have stuff out there you can now discover. And you can see we use Let's Encrypt. Let's Encrypt's amazing. Let's see some details here. Less certs than sans.org because it's a newer domain. And we have sec542.com and www.sec542.com. Not super interesting in that case, right? Let's see what crt.sh has to say about sec542.com. All right, so we get some Let's Encrypt certs down here. Again, it's newer. We've only been issuing certs since it looks like April 2019. And so let's click on the early one here. And common name, sec542.com, using Let's Encrypt. Let's Encrypt allows you to get certs for free. In fact, by the time you see this, you may see other certs in there. We're actually planning on adding some non-Let's Encrypt certs in there. So don't be surprised at all to see more certs, including things that aren't from Let's Encrypt. You probably will see that at some point. Again, that's the nature of live data. All right, let's see how we did here. Yep, that wraps up the lab. And we'll see you for lab 1.3. Thank you.